Delighted to be joined by the Athletics' Jack Pitt-Brooke. Jack from the other Tottenham podcast, A View from the Lane. Jack, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, guys.
So we're going to take it all the way back, this disgusting rainy January day, all the way back to Bilbao, to the high road, to the parade. I think we all thought that Ange Postecoglou was going to get the sack. But when that happened, where did you think we would be come mid-January?
I think it's a really good question. I don't think I had high expectations in terms of the results under any new manager. I think nobody thought Spurs were about to be a kind of close to Arsenal, Liverpool, City, and so on. I don't think anybody would have expected the football to be this bad. I think that even with a pragmatic manager, I think people would have probably expected it to be a bit less miserable. Maybe that was kind of false optimism. And sometimes I do think with Thomas Frank, like, he's just giving people a big dose of like reality medicine, and it's really like people are really can find it a bit uncomfortable being confronted with how average the squad is in so many ways. But I think that if you'd honestly asked me at that point, like at the time of the parade, when it was clear that he was going to go and that it was almost certainly going to be Thomas Frank who replaced him, I think I would have expected kind of mid-table, 8th, 9th, 10th, but with, more clean sheets, more organisation, and just more of a sense that things were heading in the right direction. I think that's been kind of painfully missing, I think, from the football we've seen so far this season. Is there's been no sense of, well, sure, this is a bit rubbish and boring now, but we're going to be really good in 6 months' time. And I mean, like, nobody feels like that at all. I think that too has also surprised me a bit.
We all hear that there was a shortlist of 30 managers and they all went through this heavy metric system to work out who the best manager was, and they ended up with Thomas Frank. Obviously, Spurs have been quite synonymous of overcorrecting, really, and going from too attacking to too defensive back to maybe too attacking. But I was thinking that it almost feels like they've gone from focusing on how high can we make the ceiling to now how high can we make the floor. And you talk about progression and can we be 8th? Can we be 9th? Do you feel that that's the way in which a club like Tottenham should be acting, in the sense that I'm not convinced that jumping from 17th to 9th is the way you then get 4th, 3rd, 2nd again?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't really know what the way you get 2nd, 3rd, and 4th is. I think it's really hard because the bar is so high. But I think you're absolutely right that overcorrection is basically the story, and I think that's because, Dan. I think that, so, like, if you just try and put yourself in Daniel Levy's mind when he would have been going through this process, I'm sure that he would basically have been, I imagine that he would basically have been thinking to himself, why did Ange go wrong? Too ideological about attacking football, not enough Premier League experience. He wasn't kind of tested in the Premier League. So what do we need from the next bloke? Well, we need like someone who's really pragmatic and who's tested in the Premier League. And if you do that, that's what leads you to having a situation where your two options of Thomas Frank and Marco Silva. And it's just pure overcorrection. Because I actually think there was a lot to really like about both Ange, about both like Ange as the manager, and also the idea of appointing somebody who hadn't worked in the Premier League, who had a very distinctive attacking style of play. And sure, like, it had tons, Ange as a person, as a manager, had weaknesses. The football he played certainly had massive weaknesses, but I thought there was like an attractive logic to getting him in, and I feel like all of that has now just been thrown into the bin, basically. And it's been like, oh no, we're going to go in a completely different. We're going to go in a completely different direction again. And so, but I think that's just so typical of so much of the strategy, for want of a better word, that we saw at Tottenham over the last like 6 or 7 years. Right? It's the same as going from almost at every point, Tottenham made some kind of big strategic jump, which didn't really kind of make sense, like going from Poch to Jose, and then getting, and then talking about Tottenham DNA, and then like a few weeks later getting in Nuno, and then having him for 10 days, and then getting Conte, and then going from Conte to Ange. Like the whole thing has been a series of like confused lurches, and like, what's our identity? We've got to figure it out. Let's and like the whole thing is like every Spurs fan will be familiar with this process that the club has been in for such a long time, that I think that this kind of pivot to Thomas Frank this in June this year is just kind of consistent with the sort of long series of strategic lurches we've seen from the club over the last, well, now like 7 or 8 years.
And where do you stand on Frank personally? We'll come to the board shortly. Is it Frank? Is it the board? Where are you on the squad? Because people say, oh, look at Frank at Brentford. For me, I'm wondering whether people say that and we remember the big match of the day wins against Man United and Arsenal, but we didn't really watch Brentford against Everton or Burnley or whatever. Yes, he had a great forward line, probably better than ours right now, but how much of it is down to him, the squad, or upstairs, or all of it?
Well, I think there's more than enough blame to go around. I think that I like him. I think he's a smart and interesting guy, and yeah, I think he is a good person and interesting from a media perspective to deal with. My worry, I guess I have a few worries about him, but ultimately, which boil down to like managing Brentford and managing Tottenham are just so different.
Yeah.
It's in so many ways. Like the first is simply the size of the club. And with obviously managing a bigger club means there's very different expectations about the sort of football you play. And also the way that you carry yourself and the things that you say. And I think that I don't want to like get back into arguing about Ange, but like for all his faults, I think Ange understood how to carry yourself if you manage a big team. And you have to, the sort of things you have to say and the kind of the way like you have to sort of front up and you have to be charismatic and you have to be a figurehead. And Ange was very willing to do that. And I don't think Thomas Frank is capable in the same way of being a figurehead for a big club. Like people used to take the piss when Ange said, "I'm not aiming for fifth spot, mate." I thought that was actually, in hindsight, I actually think that was a really that was the kind of thing that you want your manager to say.
Yeah.
Like if Thomas Frank said, "I'm not aiming for fifth spot, mate," it would be because he's aiming for ninth. You know what I mean? Like I think that Ange. So I think, what I would say though is that there is a lot of managers in recent football history who have managed a smaller club, tried to go up to a bigger club, and they haven't fitted. And that's not because they're bad managers. It's just they haven't quite like. It's like David Moyes is a great manager, like bombed at Man United. Roy Hodgson's a great manager, bombed at Liverpool. Even like Graham Potter did really well, and then went to Chelsea and kind of never really fitted at Chelsea.
Well, how many managers have scaled up? Poch is immediately.
It's rarer to find the guy who scales up than the guy who doesn't. I think Poch did scale up, but the reason that Poch did that, I think, is because he was already playing big club football at Saints. He was managing a team with like Shaw and Lambert and Alana and those guys, but like playing proper like modern cutting edge big club football. So it wasn't so much of a jump, I think, when he went to Tottenham in 2014. But the more I see of Thomas Frank, the more I think it feels more like Hodgson at Liverpool or Moyes at Man United. Like he's very good at certain things, but I think both in terms of the football, which is obviously a huge issue for a lot of people, understandably, and also the way that I think he kind of the sort of things that he says and the sort of how he carries himself in public. I just don't think it quite fits. And maybe there's scope for him to change, but I think at the moment I feel like it doesn't. I think a lot of people feel like it doesn't quite fit.
Football-wise, and I'm running the risk of having our producer cut us off by even mentioning cricket, but we all stayed up, a number of times over the winter and watched Bazball lose the Ashes. And one of the most depressing parts of it was that you pretty much knew at every moment how and why the team were going to lose. There was nothing surprising about it. And at the end of Ange, we were losing games in exactly the way that fans would walk up to the stadium and say, if we lose, it'll probably be like that. And other than results against teams from Manchester, we've not really had any surprising results that sort of make you go, wow, we won that game for about 3 years. And I think that's something that's playing into quite a lot of the monotony at the moment. Do you see Frank as a guy that can get to that level where you're getting the surprising, going to Chelsea and winning 3-1 or, I know Man City we beat, but even like, I don't know, going to Brighton and winning well and stuff like that, just results that shock you?
Just before you answered, I said when he was appointed, I actually thought that's what we would become. We haven't been to Arsenal yet, but we'd go to Arsenal, we'd go to Chelsea, we'd go to Anfield. All right, we've not been there yet, and get those results that we've not got in the last 4 or 5 years.
I feel further away than ever from those results now.
Yeah,
I feel. I mean, their away record is much better than their home record, and they have, their league position, such as it is built on away wins. So I don't think. So I think they can. I think in theory they can do it. And obviously they won at City. It's nothing new for Spurs to win at City. So I think that they. I don't. I personally, I don't worry about that. What I worry about is that if you're a big team, when you've got a home game against a team with less resources than you should really be able to wipe the floor with them.
Yeah.
And again, like this brings me back to Ange, is that for all the faults of Ange, like they were quite good at a home game in the league. And yeah, they had some awful home games, like they lost to Leicester at home, remember?
Ipswich.
But
Yeah.
yeah, Ipswich. But they could, so like on a really good day, they could just rip they could rip oppositions apart at home.
Yeah.
And I watched Tottenham at home this season, and I just think like this is not like how can you be this bad against teams with a fraction like with less budget than you? I still feel like on one level he's never really recovered from that Bournemouth home game. But they should have lost 5-0. They were horrific. Wolves, like Vitor Pereira's Wolves, they needed Polina in the 93rd minute to not lose that game. Like, and I think that's, I don't know, I think that's the most damaging thing, right? Is they go into these home games with looking like they don't want the ball, looking like they don't want to do anything, looking like they're kind of waiting to kind of trick the opposition into making a mistake. And I just think that you need to be able to take the initiative in home games if you're going to be a proper team.
Yeah, we've talked about that last week. We put some stats up after 15 minutes against Villa, and Villa had, I think it was 31 passes in our final third, and we had 4. It's a tempo thing. We don't have it. Just before we move it on from Anne, so it's from Frank.
Which no one's moving on from Anne.
It is hard to do it.
It is hard. Yeah.
People like that do leave a cloud and or like a legacy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. 31 games in all comps, 11 wins, of which I think Doncaster, Villarreal, Slavia Prague, Copenhagen are 4 of those wins. You take them out, what have we got left? Do you think there's been any, and we'll move on to the boardroom, but do you think there's been any signs from upstairs he might go? Have you sensed that? And a lot of questions here. Did the second half of Villa save him? Is West Ham do or die?
I've not heard any solid indications about his future, apart from the fact that the board have been really patient and they have been. I think, I get the impression that they think they have to not make it work, but they have to at least give it time. They have to give this time. They want to. I think they want to be seen to be loyal and doing things the right way and being patient. And I think I think a lot of fans will think they're kind of excessively so, and that maybe Daniel would have pulled the trigger quicker if he'd been still in the hot seat, but he's not anymore. Also, like this is sorry, we'll get on the board later. I think in terms of Thomas's immediate future, I don't know if the second half saved him. I kind of feel like on one level, like if you don't think he's the right man. If they don't think he's the right man, then they should sack him regardless of whether or not they had a good second half against Villa.
But I just think on that, Jack, it was Villa was singing "Sacked in the Morning," and the South Stand started singing it. If they'd lost that game 2-3-0, the optics would have been really poor.
I think that. I mean, I think the next 2 league games are huge. Like he couldn't have asked for like West Ham and Burnley. It's both a dream in the sense that they are 2 teams who are unambiguously worse than Tottenham, but it's also a nightmare, right? Because if they don't win if they lose on Saturday, I think it will be the most negative atmosphere in the history of Tottenham Hotspur Stadium.
Agreed.
I think it will be horrific.
Agreed.
I think it will be like on another level from anything we've ever seen before. Even like the worst ones, like the day they sat Nuno or whatever. The day they sat Nuno won't have anything on Saturday if they lose. And then of course Burnley obviously slightly different as an away game, but I feel like if they drop points in either of those games, then the vibes were gonna there will be more and more and more questions. And I think fundamentally, I think the biggest issue that Thomas Frank has, I think the results are survivable because I think the results are, they're kind of average, but whatever. I think the football is bad, but I think what is really going to be ultimately corrosive for Thomas Frank, even more than the football, is the fact that at the end of every game, everyone is at everyone's throats.
Yeah.
Like the negativity, like whether that's fans versus players, players versus fans, fans versus Frank, players versus Frank, all that stuff. Like I can't really remember anything like it. Even when Spurs have been really bad in the last few years, whether that was with Jose or Conte, and you can tell it's toxic. I kind of feel like the toxicity at the moment is on another level. And like when they got Thomas Frank in, I think a big part of the argument for Thomas Frank was like, yeah, it might be a bit boring, but he's going to rebuild the culture, and everyone's he's going to bring everyone back together. And he's a brilliant he's a brilliant people person. He's a brilliant like environment builder, and he's going to build a great environment like the environment of Brentford. And now I think like, how good is the environment when everyone seems to hate everyone else?
Yeah.
Like everyone is so upset and so negative, and there's so much booing and anger and rage. The end of basically every game, but every game seems to end with some kind of big blow up, and I just think like that toxicity, I think is unsurvivable. I think it's too negative, and I think that will probably be more damaging to Thomas Frank than even the football, as bad as the football is.
Slightly loose comparison, but moving on to the board, obviously we lost Daniel Levy in August, September, who was probably the guy that took all of the flack for this, and it now feels like, whereas there used to be one bullet aimed at one guy from everyone, it's now just being sprayed all over the place because no one really knows where to direct their anger. And I do, as a fan that goes to these games, there used to be Levy and it feels like he's been replaced by 5 or 6 people. I don't really have a clue what any of them do, who's actually in charge, and kind of where the focus and direction of the club comes from. Does it feel, it sort of just feels like it is a corporate business because it's a multi-billion club, but it almost feels like they've pulled the curtain back too far and shown what it is, and that's making it quite hard to root for as a fan. I don't know who runs the club, and from the most basic element, that's sort of what you want as a fan.
Yeah, I mean, this is the weird thing about Levy is that Levy, I mean, what the events of September showed more than anything is that Levy was ultimately just an employee, even an employee with a big chunk of shares. He was ultimately still an employee, and he was treated like an employee when they sacked him. But he ran Tottenham like not just as if he owned it, but almost as if he founded it. Like for 25 years, he was across every single detail of the club. Everything was run by and through him and the very, very closest people to him with such incredible like top-down control. Very different from how most other modern football clubs are run, I think. And Daniel just he kind of accumulated so much power in himself that I think sacking him, it was never going to be like sacking Scott Munn or even sacking it in a manager. Like you basically have to, and this is why I have a degree of sympathy with the hierarchy at the moment, is that once you decide to sack Daniel Levy, you have to rewire the whole thing. You have to rewire the whole football club and figure out how it all works. You have to like find a new way of working. And that is what they're in the process of doing at the moment. And clearly there've been there've been some bumps along the road already, as we've seen with Paratici, who came in for like 3.5 months, is now gone already. But I do think they have to find a new way of working, which has both like very clear organization on the ground, which obviously all goes through Vinod Venkatesham, who's the CEO, and he's built this new executive leadership team who will actually be running the club day to day. Then obviously he's accountable to the board, so Peter Charrington, the non-exec chair, and ultimately the Lewis family, who fly in for games, and and like Vivian Lewis is the most visible member of the Lewis family. But it's so different from the very, very personalized Daniel Levy approach that I feel like everyone is going to take a lot of time to get used to the new balance, the new approach.
So you don't agree with, I think it was Levy about a month before he left said, you'll all appreciate me when I'm gone. Like, I know we're only 15 days into a new window. I think the Gallagher thing was an opportunistic one after the Bentancur and possibly Bergvall injuries. Listen, we'll have to be patient, but we're not patient based on the last few years. I know we won a trophy, but we're 15 days into a transfer window. Do you see a plan? And if there is one, is it going to come to fruit in the next 15 days, or we're just going to have to wait till the summer?
I No, I don't see a plan. I think they might. I think they might buy. I'm sure they will buy some more good players. I think they've got a bit of money. They're obviously keen. They're in the market. Don't think it's that. I think if you fact is in this day and age, if you're a big Premier League team, you can kind of go and buy who you want from Europe. And I actually think it's a different topic. I think Tottenham have been really bad at buying from Europe in the last few years. I think they kind of bottled it after Ndombele. And then their approach of just buying Premier League players, I think, has been a nightmare, like for them in terms of getting value for money. Anyway, No, I don't think there's a plan just because no one has. I'm not aware. Like as far as I'm aware, no one has communicated any plan, at least the public. And this, I think, is like one of the biggest things that the new hierarchy, by which they're both like Venkatesham, Johan Langer, but also the Lewis family, they have to figure out what they want Tottenham to be and how they want to get there. And like, even with like Levy jumped around lots of different strategies, but it was always clear, it was always kind of broadly clear what he was trying to do, even if his method, even if his kind of route to doing that changed all the time. Like everybody knew Levy was ultimately trying to get Tottenham to the top table, trying to make them a big club, trying to get them to be seen to be like a big club, trying to grow the value of the club over time. No one really knows what the Lewis family want. Like nobody really knows what's their goal in like 3-5 years time. And so far, all we've heard from them is stuff that's just kind of really obvious. Like, we just want to win more games.
Well, they haven't started
So
that
I think,
yet.
no, it hasn't started yet. So yeah, I think that has to be one of the things that we get some kind of clarity on in 2026. And this is something where the Lewis family, I think, have to get better at communicating because we've heard literally nothing from them so far. They're like little bits here and there, and then stuff through Vinay Venkatesham. Is we have to know what the strategy is, what are they actually trying to do, and how are they going to try and get there.
Just going back to onto the pitch, Adam said on the show on Monday, it was like the Bombonera in there on Saturday against Villa when we strung 2 passes together and had a few shots and scored a goal. It was quite simple, Spurs fans. We're okay with losing. It's how we lose. And, they had a go, but they only seem to have a go at 2-0. How do you see the playing squad? Because a lot of players was, this one's shit and that one's shit. And you saw on Saturday, when they're allowed to sort of, or decided themselves to go forward and knock the ball about, they can play. Yes, the squad's got holes in it, but how do you actually see the playing side of things?
Well, I think in Thomas Frank's defense, I think that the like probably the 3 best attacking players of last season have not played a game yet. Like Maddison, Kulusevski, and Solanke were probably the 3 best attacking players last year. Maybe you'd say Sonny as well, who has also left. So and I think that the more I think about the squad, the more I think that while if you just think of it through the prism of other Premier League teams, like I could imagine Romero, Van de Ven, and Porro at another big 6. I could easily see those 3 at City or Liverpool, which is basically, or I hate to say at Arsenal, which is basically like the benchmark. But the attacking players, I mean, I don't want to bag them too much, because they're all trying their best. But like, would Spurs' attacking players look out of place at Everton, at West Ham?
No, I think
Leeds?
I think they're good players being badly coached or not coached at all in an attacking
Maybe.
sense.
I mean, it's hard to say, right? Because I think like Odegaard is talented, but how much has he ever produced? Like very, very little, really. I think Tell is talented, but has also produced very little. I think that Colin Mawani, I think, is clearly talented, but has he scored?
I think he's barely had a Premier League
goal so far?
he's barely had a Premier League shot. In all honesty,
yeah. So I think there's some talent there. I like Gray, I like Bergval, but they're 19, and they've got a long way to go. I think they've got huge issues in the middle of the pitch, but I mean, Bentancur should not be the best and most reliable central midfield. Like this Bentancur, who's clearly nowhere near as good as he was when he joined, he shouldn't be their best and most reliable central midfielder.
Yeah.
Richarlison should not be their best and most reliable and fittest centre forward. It's like amazing that they're in this situation where they're so reliant on guys who are not really like at the level, and then they've got a bunch of other like very sort of talented kids who are still making their way. So no, put it all together, take out the injured players. I don't think the squad is very good. Could they be better? Probably. I'm not saying they have to play the way they play at the moment, but I also don't think they have. I guess one other thing I'd say about the players is that I think that the only way to really engage the fans in the second half of this season is probably to play those young players. It's probably to try the sort of like Tim Sherwood's 2014 vibe. Like they have, the only way out of this is probably just to play Odegaard, Tell, Bergval, Gray, and hope that they can kind of do enough to get people going.
It's funny you talk about that Sherwood period, because the summer of player losses that we've had, and with the injuries as well, and the manager felt quite similar to, I think you were covering Spurs at the end of the 2012 season when you lose Harry Redknapp, Ledley King, Luka Modric and Van der Vaart all in one go. That felt like such a key spine, like they were the people that led that era. And you obviously had the strange AVB Bale era that then led itself into Mauricio Pochettino with a load of young players, and we read his first team out that he played against West Ham, and it was an absolute dog of a side.
Norton.
Norton,
And obviously it is really hard for any Spurs conversation to be had without Pochettino coming up. I don't know what your views on it as a potential, go again, or is it just a case of we just need to move on and it feels like things are so bad that you just look for, the ex that you used to really like?
I don't know. I have sort of mixed feelings about it, but I do have mixed feelings about it. I think it feels hard
to not have the chance to see it again when things are as bad
what
as
do you
this
guys
now.
think about it? Do you guys think it's a risk worth taking?
I was very much Poch's race was run. I know he wasn't backed and blah blah blah. We didn't win away for a year. I think his race was run. I think it's an emotional return, and I don't think they work. I'm not sure how great a coach he actually really is, but I'm probably lowest on bringing him back, but I would bring him back because I think the club needs. I actually think the club needs that emotional return. I think we need, as you said, Ange brought us all together, and that worked for 10 games. I think Poch will bring us back together, and it would probably last longer. I don't know how long it would last, but yeah, I'm not against. My problem with it is actually, Jack, is that if he comes back, if the USA get to the round of 16 minimum, he doesn't come back till third week of July. Does that work? Yeah, he can sort of do it remotely, and the players that come back are just doing the bleep test. But I don't know. Are we literally just? Is Frank the interim now for Poch? I don't know. Would I have him back? Yeah, I think I probably would, and I was.
I think the timing is quite bad. I think people are. I think this is not just Spurs, but it's true of lots of people. Like people are, I think, a bit blasé about how easy it would be from coaching in the World Cup and then going straight into a Premier League pre-season. Like it can. Yeah. So Conte did it in 2016. I think he was Italy manager at Euro 2016. Then as soon as they got knocked out, he went to Chelsea and then actually won the league that year. But in the main, I think it's quite difficult to manage that transition.
Jacques Santini not quite as successful in 2004 with Spurs.
But yeah, I mean. I think that like when I think about like the upside of bringing in Mauricio, I just think what Tottenham needs more than anything else, I think, is a sense of kind of unity and alignment, as football people call it, and just shared purpose. Like there has been no sense, as you said, apart from the very start of Ange, there's been no real sense of shared purpose about Tottenham for years, really. Like everyone's pulling in different directions, and it was only really. The only time I think it's been that clear, that such a clear sense of shared purpose, which pulled together the board, the manager, the players, and the fans, was during those peak Pochettino years. But so I don't know if anybody else can do. I don't know if anybody else can do what he did. Can kind of make sense of Tottenham and bring together all those different disparate elements. That I think was his kind of genius. Really, is the way that he found. The way that he took, like, the historic expectations of the club, the kind of profile of the young squad that he had, the like finding a way to play that made Tottenham cutting edge in the Premier League in a way that they hadn't really been before or since, arguably. And also that kind of really resonated with what the fans wanted to hear and and also that resonated with what Daniel Levy was trying to do at that point and the sort of the direction of the club from the top down. Like there's never really been anything like that, I think, at Spurs, and at least in my time covering them. And I've basically got no confidence that any other manager can do that.
Yeah,
I've got no confidence that any other manager can make sense of all these disparate bits of the different aspects and elements of managing Tottenham and bring them all together in a way that makes sense for everyone, in a way that everybody can buy into. I've not seen anybody else do it, and I don't think anybody else can or will do it except for Mauricio. And I think that is probably why I would support him coming back, because I just don't believe that anybody else can do it like he can.
just moving on to the fans, there's been some pretty ugly moments, inside the Tottenham Stadium. But I think when you're 2-0 down to Fulham at 8:06 on a Saturday night, that is not an unreasonable thing to happen. But you followed this club for such a long time, and as well as anyone else that we pay an awful lot of money. We don't always get a particularly great return on that. We are often being gaslit by owners, managers, players slagging us off. And I wonder, I know there's aggregators that lurk in the long grass of these podcasts, and I don't want it to be Jack Pitt-Brooke slams all Tottenham fans, but I feel that we get a pretty harsh go of it in the perception of Tottenham fans. Like, I don't think we require much more than just to see our team have a real go. And that's why this year's been so upsetting. Do you think our perceptions and our expectations of what we sort of hope to see are unreasonable, or can you kind of feel it, feel the anger along with us? Because you're about as Tottenham as they come without being a Spurs fan.
Yeah, I think that I think Tottenham fans do have it tough because just because the prices, the Tottenham fans have been absolutely kind of price gouged basically for years. And I think that that's obviously it's going to colour how Tottenham feel about the football club, how it's going to colour how the fans feel about the football club. I think it also kind of like subtly changes how a lot of people feel. Like, if you feel like a paying customer, you are going to feel different about what you see compared to if you don't feel like you're just being squeezed as a customer. I also think that people get it slightly wrong when they say, "Oh, it's I often feel like sometimes when managers and players are asked about this, as they often are, there's kind of implication in what they say, which is, "Oh, it's chicken and egg, isn't it?" It's like, of course we want to play better, but we need more support to play better. I don't think it is chicken and egg. I think the ultimate responsibility is with the team,
Correct.
and the manager. And I do think that if they played any kind of like serviceable, not even winning football, but just like watchable football at home, people would get behind it, and they haven't. They've been awful, like really like unbelievably bad in so many home games this year, like miles worse than they were in for a lot of previous years. I mean, for all that people bleated about the results and the style of play under Conte and Mourinho, like,
This is much worse.
Yeah.
it's on another level. It's on another level. Like, the home performances this season will be on another level from anything that we saw under Conte or Mourinho. So yeah, I think ultimately the responsibility has to come with the players and the team. I do think the club is kind of starting to realize how bad it is. I think they maybe had their head in the sand a little bit in the past, but I think the club is definitely thinking, "Oh God, this is actually like, it's bad. The atmosphere is this bad. It's bad that fans are this. The fans don't really seem to trust us or trust the team in like they used to. It's bad that we want to get back to having the stadium full of noisy fans, and it can be like the stadium can be good, and it's only. I mean, when was Bodo Glimt at home? That was end of April, start of May of last year, so less than a year ago.
20 minutes on Saturday night. It was brilliant. I don't know if you're at the Villa game, but for 20 minutes, it was rocking. It was great fun.
Yeah.
It can be really good. It's just, I think they just need to play better. I think that some things are simpler than people allow you to think they are. I don't think this is one of them. Like, if Tottenham played better, the atmosphere would be better. Correct. And I think that there's a lot of probably too much thought goes into stuff like, "Oh, we're going to get like big like firework machines by the pitch to like light up." People don't give a fuck about that.
Just shoot more.
Yeah, exactly. Like, have the ball, create chances, score goals, and that makes a difference. It's not like any of the sort of like silly NFL-y type stuff that they're trying to introduce.
I could be wrong here. I'm just thinking out loud. When did we last like go ahead at home? Have we recently?
Well, the problem is that even when they've gone ahead at home,
Sunderland,
that great half against Sunderland that is now DVD worthy apparently for our 1-2 shots on target.
I think one thing where, if I was to take the other side of the argument and say the fans need to do more, I would say that there have been times this season where they've gone 1-0 up early, and then it's just gone flat, like straight after. And like, maybe that's because the football is not the team doesn't look like they're trying to score a second goal. But equally, maybe the players might think, well, we've gone 1-0 up. Like, I'm trying to think what game am I thinking of. Let me
Well,
figure out which game
Sunderland was, as Ad says, was the last time.
Sunderland's a good example. Villarreal, where they clung. So Villarreal at
Yeah.
home, they clung on and they did win 1-0, but like nothing. That was a
It was
terrible
so
game.
bad.
Yeah.
That's one of the worst.
But that comes down to Frank. We almost say on here that he'd draw 0-0, and if it's not that, well, then if you have scored, cling on to that. We don't trust that they're going to go out and try and make it 2-0.
No. So Villa at home in the league, I guess, is one I was thinking of.
Oh,
where
yeah.
they went 1-0 up after 5 minutes, and then they just did nothing at all. And then Rogers scored, and then Buendia scored in the second half. And Frank said they played well afterwards. Now, you might say that the problem there is that the team did nothing at 1-0. Like, they looked terrified. They were like, oh, God, we're 1-0 up, and there's only 5 minutes gone. Like, we're going to have to defend this for 85 minutes. Alternatively, some people might say, well, at 1-0 up, the fans should have been louder and like back the team more. I'm not sure I quite agree with that, but I think that is a view that is like a view that's out there as well.
Last question, Jack. Where in your head, where does this all end? And does it end with Mauricio Pochettino in July?
I would bet against Thomas Frank being sacked during the course of this season, because I think what's the rational, like, who? I don't think there's a rational case for sacking him during the course of the season. I think that there's no one on the market who they can get. There's almost literally no one. They're not going to go down. They're also not. I don't think the players are good enough that if you sack him and get in like a popular caretaker who everyone likes, suddenly they're going to be getting 2 points per game. Like, the squad is not good enough for that. I think they have to continue to take the medicine and then see where they are in the summer. I imagine that by the end of the season, they will probably have finished about 12th, and then they'll have a think, and I would probably bet on them appointing a different manager. I would be surprised if, but then equally, like, this is hard, right? Because I don't know what the Lewis family wants. Like, I just don't know. Like, even Daniel Levy, because he'd run it for 25 years. After a while, you can kind of figure out what Daniel Levy wants at any point, or like what's he motivated by, what are his incentives, where's he trying to take Tottenham, how's he going to try and get them there. But like with the Lewis family, I don't know. Like, it's not just that I don't know what they're thinking on any given day. I don't really know what their goals are. So I don't know. But that all said, I would bet on him surviving this season, and then I would probably not bet on him starting the next season. Poch in the summer, I don't know. I mean, it makes sense on so many levels, and yet I would still probably bet on a more like Premier League guy, like someone who's in the Premier League at the moment. The fact is, it's going to be quite a good summer for appointing managers. You've got, whether it's Poch and like managers who are in international football, like, Ancelotti, Nagelsmann, Tuchel, all out of contract. I'm not saying that Tottenham will get them, but I think they will all be on the market. And then you've got people coming at the end of their Premier League contracts, like Glasner, Iraola, Marco Silva. I just think there will be quite a lot of people who just got sacked, like Alonso or Amorim, or I think there'll be a lot of options out there. So yeah, but if I had to bet on Pochettino or not, I would probably, sad to say, bet against it, I think.
Last one from me. It's been a very serious 40 minutes of doom in this horrible day. But you've been covering Tottenham for such a long time. As I say, you are almost died in the wall Tottenham as far as I'm concerned. And I know that you loved it in Bilbao and being part of it in the celebrations. But I just wondered if there's any sort of little quintessentially Tottenham things like Chick King or whatever that sort of live with you, that things that you love about Tottenham, that we're all a bunch of old blokes that like nostalgia and little things, and it's just be good to hear any sort of Danny Kelly-esque rant things that you like about the club.
Yeah.
Or any thoughts that you've had about Spurs that have just been sort of left on the cutting room floor recently, because I know that you're always thinking about the club and the way it goes.
I am always thinking about Spurs. Spurs is the first thing I think about in the morning and the last thing I think about at night.
Join the club.
I think that the walk from Seven Sisters on a good day is unbeatable, because it's like exactly the right length. It's like, what, half an hour, I guess. And like seeing the stadium slowly emerge through the through the city is great. I just love the fact that Tottenham is ultimately in the city. Like they didn't just put it in Hertfordshire. They didn't put the new stadium in Hertfordshire or Essex or something, which I guess like an NFL equivalent would have done, right? Like if you were an NFL team and you were moving out of the city, you would definitely go out into the countryside, wouldn't you? Where you could build a huge parking lot. So yeah, I love the fact that Tottenham is still in Tottenham. Um, I I think it's been. I mean, it is amazing how many, even though Tottenham is a huge club in itself and has been huge, is very very well, very popular around the world. This shit like the number of brilliant players they've had, even in the last like 20 years, where they've achieved a bit, but probably could have achieved more. Like Kane. I mean, Kane is one of the best. I think Kane is like one of the best players of all time. He's certainly one of the best players of the 21st century, easily. Son is an all-time great player. Like Modric and Bale are also two of the best players of the 21st century. So it's incredible how it's incredible how so many of these good players have either starred for or passed through Tottenham. And I guess if I've got a bit of a concern for the future, it's that I don't really see where the next like truly great Tottenham players
we've always had one. Even in the 90s, you'd go and skip down the highway to watch Ginola. Like we've always had one. Klinsmann. There's always been one, and there just isn't that right now.
Yeah, and I feel like I don't know where that's going to come from. I kind of hoped, and that's probably one of my like if I take a step back and think about the sort of like 3-year view. I've always thought it's a bit of a. I think it was both a blessing and a curse that Tottenham got Kane for free and Sonny for 20 million. Because I think on one level it kind of convinced Daniel Levy, like we don't have to spend big, like we can just be like we can be clever and lucky, and we can get world-class players without having to do the hard yards. And the sad reality of modern football is that recruitment is so much harder, even now. I mean, it's miles harder than it was when they got Luka Modric from Dinamo Zagreb. It's much harder than when they got Sonny from Bayer Leverkusen, and that was only 10 years ago. Like the like.
Is that because everyone's doing it?
Yeah, I think everyone is doing it. Everyone has all the best data, all the best videos. You can't. I don't think you can get an edge. The idea that you can kind of get an edge by like flying someone over to the Bundesliga to watch Bayer Leverkusen.
Yeah, but we got like Van der Ven. I mean, he's
Van der Ven was good. Van der Ven
good.
was a rare one actually. I think because he was he's played for Wolfsburg, so I guess like fairly well established. But to get him was really good. But I just think like getting like the demands for getting high-end attacking talent, I think is so hard. And the problem also is that in modern football, I think you wouldn't get someone like Son. I don't think someone like Son would be on the market at the age of 21 because they get bought by like CFG or like Red Bull or Blueco, or they get bought by like a big family of clubs.
Stockpile these players.
Exactly. Like Chelsea would sign as soon as, even when they're in career or whatever, like Blueco, CFG, whoever would see Sonny, sign him, and then just like loan him around their farm teams until such a point they either play him for their main team or sell him. So I don't know. I'm a bit. Sometimes I do wonder, like, will Tottenham? What's Tottenham's? And if I was on the Tottenham board, I would be thinking, how are we going to get our next superstar in? Because like so much like commercial, not even football wise, but commercially, so much of football now is about like you need superstar players, right, to put on shirts and put on your sponsors. And if I was selling Tottenham sponsorships now, who would be the person that I'd go to potential clients with?
I just want to say that if anyone doubted your Tottenham credentials, I asked you a cheery question and you've made it miserable. So yeah, that is like, the most proper Tottenham thing I think I've ever heard anyone say.
Cheery. Yeah, it's just this is what's on my mind at the moment. What else is cheery?
We got free pin badges against Aston Villa. That's cheery.
Yeah, that is cheery.
So yeah, I love covering Tottenham, and I'm trying to end on a positive. I don't know. I'm kind of quite down at the moment.
Well, yeah, we all are.
Yeah, we all are.
Just because they're really bad.
Yeah. All right, here we go. We're going to beat West Ham.
I was going to do another negative bit. I'm not going to do another negative.
You can do negative. That's what we're here for. That's what people really like. We get more views on the losses than the wins.
Negative bit. So my first thing that keeps me awake at night is when are they next going to have a good player, like a really good player.
Right.
And I mean like a good attacking player as well. I don't mean like as good as Van der Ven is. I mean like a really, really good attacking player.
I'm hoping that's Xavi Simons when he gets to grips with all of this.
And my other worry is that when they had Ange, it felt like they were trying to be a good team and failing. They were trying to play like good. They were trying to play like big team football, and they were just getting it wrong. And they got it wrong basically every week last season. But they were trying. Whereas now they feel like a mid-table team trying to play mid-table football, and I think that is a big like psychological difference. And I fear that if they spend too long trying to be a mid-table team playing mid-table football, it will be difficult for them to return to being a big team playing big team football again. That's my fear.
See, I look at
And maybe
Villa and
I'm
I think
wrong.
it's all on recruitment, and you get a good coach and you can be Villa in 18 months. Time.
Yeah, and I do think that if I was going to be optimistic, I would say the examples of both Villa and Newcastle show that even if you're quite shit, if you get a good manager who is able both to, because both Emery and Howe, whatever you think about them, they're able. They're kind of like they're very like flexible between what I kind of categorize like small team football and big team football. But I think Emery and Howe are kind of good and pragmatic enough that they can do both. Like they have made like they can wipe the floor with teams on a good day, but they're also made their teams very, very difficult to play, and they're not like difficult to play against, annoying to play against. They do all the basics really well. They're very well organized, and they've both been given total power. Both Emery and Eddie Howe have been given total power and control, years to rebuild, lots of money to spend, total like control of all aspects of the football club. And in both cases, they've done really, really good jobs. And I think that having been, Villa, Newcastle were a mess when Eddie Howe took over from, was it Steve Bruce? Villa were a mess when he took over, Emery took over from Steven Gerrard. And that was only like, 4 years ago, I think. I mean, Emery was about 3.5 years ago. Eddie Howe was like 4 and a bit years ago. So it's not a huge amount of time. And so it can be done.
Yeah.
Like it can, like Tottenham are not terminally bad. They're not bad forever. But they need to kind of get everything right they need to get every decision right for a few years. And given they've got basically every decision wrong for a few years, it's going to take a while to turn the ship around.
Yeah, I agree. And this is what I say to people who tell me they're giving up their season ticket. Look, it's dark now, but it will get better. If I told you 20 years ago that in 10 years we'd got to a Champions League final, you'd laugh me out of town down the high road. Right. So the positive is it will get better, and it can get better. Jack, thank you so much for joining us. People don't need to know this, but follow Jack on Twitter, on social media. Listen to A View from the Lane, an absolutely incredible podcast. My go-to on a Monday afternoon when it comes out, and on a Thursday after we play midweek. Jack, that's it. Thank you so much for joining us, and we really appreciate it.
Guys, thank you so much for having me on the show. It's been really fun.
Thank you. Cheers, Jack.